Today we learned about stereotypes, which helps us to create objects automatically by just scanning your packages, right? During implementation of your MVC classes, whatever it is, a controller or a service or DAO or any utility class, or it can be a configuration class. They have given specific annotation for each type of class. For each category of class, they given a specific annotation. Okay, we call all these annotations as a stereotype annotations. Okay, and for all these annotations, the parent annotation is component. Component is a parent annotation, and these annotations can be used on top of controller class level annotations. Few annotations, if you see, they are field level, method level, right? And few are class level. So this annotation is class level annotation. On top of class, we will put these annotations. Okay. So which annotation we need to use on which place means this class level annotations, class level annotation on class, on class we need to put them on top of class. On top of which class? It depends on your class type. If it is a controller class, we will go with controller annotation or REST controller annotation. Okay. So if you mention controller or REST controller, they are capable to read data which is coming from front end. Okay. Either with the controller or REST controller, when you annotate your class will get capabilities of web request you can read, or else a REST request you can read. For web or REST, we will use these classes. For web or REST, we will use these classes. When you specify a controller or a REST controller, we will use them for web or REST based applications. When your application is web based or REST based, you will be using these two annotations. When you mention service annotation, this should be on top of your business class, or you may say service class. Okay, on top of business class you need to use service annotation. Along with service, we will use few annotations like transactions to control the transactions. At the rate transaction we will use to achieve the ACID properties, right? For the database transactions, while doing database transactions, to achieve the atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability for your database operation. During CRUD operations, we use service with the transaction combination, and the services we use for AOP also. With the AOP, we will proxy them. We will discuss it later. Okay. Services are for business classes. Services are business classes, and with the transaction, we will apply transactions as well, but not mandatory. Okay. Service purely we use for business, and we use repository annotation for DAO classes. Repository or REST repository we use for DAO classes, database operations. When you have CRUD operations, right? Create, update, retrieve, insert, delete. For all such CRUD operations, we use this repository or REST repository annotations. And one of the important annotation is config. On configuration classes, we will use on configurations. A application will have a lot of configurations like connection configurations, REST templates, or Kafka related integration properties or integration objects. You will be having a lot of integration stuff to your application, right? So all such configurations we will do under configuration class. Under configuration class. Okay, configuration with at the rate bean combination we use mostly. Configuration at the rate bean combination. When you see a configuration class, definitely you will find at the rate bean classes inside it. Okay, a configuration class will contain at the rate beans. Nowhere else. Inside configuration, you will see at the rate beans. We'll talk more about it. Okay, very, very, very important concept. And if you have any miscellaneous classes, okay, I mean not miscellaneous, utility classes like validations or converters, currency converters, date converters, some helper classes if you implement for your application. We usually put them under utilities. For all such utilities, you can go with at the rate component annotation. So why all these annotations are for? As a developer, during writing your application, during coding, once as and when you get the requirement, right, the requirement will be given to you. When I ask you people, create a screen for employee registration with name, email and address. So then immediately you will start creating a web page with name, email and address. You know how to create it using HTML. You can create this page. As soon as you're done with this front end page, you will shift focus to backend implementation. So in backend, first you will be starting with controller class. As soon as you start creating a controller class with a class name, some controller class, employee controller. So as soon as you create controller class, immediately you will be putting at the rate controller annotation on top of it. But you need not to go to any XML file and configure it again. So you need not to bother about configurations now. So you mention controller annotation, then you focus on your CRUD operations. Excuse me. So you can write your post method, get methods, whichever required here. So here you will be having a method to read the data. Okay. So HTTP methods you will be having here. HTTP methods you will be writing here. Post, get, delete, put. All such methods you will be writing here just to read the data which is coming from front end. And from here you will be forwarding it into service layer. HTTP methods like post. Let's say if it is a create operation, you will be putting post here. Wait just a minute, please. So into the post you will get the data, name, email, address data you will be getting here. So as soon as you get this data, then immediately you shift your focus to next class. You will be implementing a service class here, class employee service. Then immediately you need to put an annotation called at the rate service. That's it. You need not to visit your XML file and configure this thing. And under service, whichever business method. Business method is nothing but to save this data. If you have any calculations, maybe you need to put that calculations. If you don't have anything, just service will behave like a intermediate, uh, mediator between your DAO and controller class. So maybe you will be putting a create method here, and the same data you will be reading, which is coming from post method. The post method will transfer data to create method, and from here you will be sending it to DAO class. Finally, you will be writing a DAO class. So here you will be having a save method with required inputs, and you will be doing CRUD operation here. And you will be just putting one annotation here at the rate repository. At the rate repository. That's it. As a developer, you should not or you need not to go to XML file to configure your classes. One-time configuration must be done there in XML file. One-time configuration must be done using context colon component scan. When you put context colon component scan base package, whatever base package decided for your application, right? So that base package name must be created during your application skeleton creation itself. Means basic application or basic project with the form file dependencies while creating itself. If you could have configured your package name here, con.rbu.star something, you need not to go to your XML file and bother about your configurations. If you have any doubt that whether your package is there or not, you must visit and check it. Otherwise, you need not to see or visit your XML file to configure your bean classes. Fine. So when I submit this page, you designed it fine. So you have a web page and you submitted it, it will go to controller class. Till here it is fine. From here if you want to transfer request, from here if you want to send request, the post data if you want to send to create method, from here to there if you want to send the information, from create to save if you want to send the information. When you design your classes objects container will create with the stereotype when you mention it. But when you receive request, if you want to forward that request from one method to another method, you need that particular class object. Controller needs service object. Service needs employee DAO object. How we can get that objects? Earlier when we have XML based configurations, we used to do manual dependency injection. DAO object into service, service object into controller, we injected. Just yeah. So when we use XML based configurations, we used to inject them by using IDs directly. So if I have a dependency here, if I have a service dependency here, I need to put employee service. Into that employee service, by using setter method or constructor, we used to inject it. When you have dependency, and when you have dependency of employee DAO here, we used to inject it by using setter methods. Setter methods are constructors, right? So using property tag, let's say you have a bean here, bean ID class C controller, into employee controller by calling setter method and by passing a reference of service class here, service class reference here. We used to do manual dependency injection. We used to do manual dependency injection just by passing service class reference here. So your service class need to be created here by using the same ID, bean ID, yes, class name, employee service. Same way you should be injecting DAO also into service. Property name, DAO, and the reference of DAO class you will be passing here. So this DO object must be created with ID D, and that D need to be passed here, which means we will be having DO class with ID. This is how manually we used to inject all these properties, right? If you see, by using IDs and the reference tags, we used to inject them. This ID we injected here manually here, and this ID manually we injected here. So dependency injection we performed manually when we implement XML based configurations for MVC application. Always DOs need to be injected into services, services need to be injected into controllers. Now to do this manual dependency injection, I don't have bean tags and their IDs here. We completely avoided bean tags. Without bean tags, by using simple context colon component scan itself, we are creating all the bean objects. So there is no bean tag and there is no ID tag. There is no bean and ID. How I can do the manual dependency injection? No, I can't do that. Manual dependency injection, now you cannot perform it. Instead of you doing manual dependency injection, you can assign that job also to IOC. How you can do that? On top of your dependencies, mention at the rate AutoWire. On top of your dependency property, let me take a small, just mention on top of your property, right? Just mention at the rate AutoWire. On top of your properties, just mention at the rate AutoWire. Just mention at the rate AutoWire annotation. When you mention AutoWire annotation, container will do what? Anyway, container is going to create three controller objects. When you put stereotype annotations on top of your classes, it will create your DAO object, one object for DAO, it will create one object for DAO and one object for service and one object for controller it will create. So three objects it will create. A DAO object with one default ID it will create. Forget about ID. It will create object, employee DAO and service and the controller objects. So all these objects are already created by your IOC. It will create three objects: DO object, service object, controller object. When you mention at the rate auto void on top of any property, particularly at the rate auto void we use on secondary types only. This is not allowed for primitives or collections. This is allowed only for secondary types, user defined classes. Okay, when you have secondary type classes on top of secondary classes, when you mention auto void, right? Okay, first it will create the DO object, service object, controller object. Just imagine only objects are created. Now within your object, if you mention auto-wired, Spring will do what? It will read your class also. It will read your methods, properties, everything. If it find at the rate auto-wired annotation on top of any property, okay. Once after creation of service object, it will check whether is there any property with the Spring mentioned annotations or not. It will check. So Spring auto-wired annotation you used here on top of employee DO reference. What it will do immediately, once after creation of service object, here it will identify that it needs a DO dependency. From this auto-wired annotation, it will understand that you need a DO object here. So immediately what it will do, whatever DO object you have created, that DO object reference, it will pass it into service class. It will do automatic dependency injection. Same way, once after creation of controller object, it will check whether this controller class is having any at the rate auto-wired properties or not. When it identifies a service class with at the rate auto-wired, It will check for that service class is available or not. Yes, service class is available. So that service class object automatically it will inject into controller class. So all the objects creation job and dependency injection job now taken care by IOC container. You need not to bother about any configurations. Just during your development, while creating your class, mention stereotype annotation. While mentioning your dependencies, mention at the rate auto-wired annotation. Bus, and you can focus on your methods. That's it. You need not to worry about any bean tags, property tags, dependency injections. That all headache will taken care by IOC container. Okay. So this is how we automated it. Why I give an example of car making is, if you imagine doing this tags creation and doing dependency injections manually for lot of beans, it will take lot of time and the maintenance problem also, right? So during keep on incrementing this file, sometimes there is a chance that we may use the same duplicate IDs that might create problems, or you may delete somebody's configurations, you may override. So we cannot take a risk on the configuration sprint. So all these configurations, if we avoid and if we automate it, then we need not to bother about configurations, manual configurations at least here. So that will be taken care by IOC container. So you need not to do anything. Just mention context column component scan. It will it will create objects. And to activate auto-wire annotation, right? To activate auto-wire annotation, you need to inform to container by saying activate the annotations. How to inform? Using context column namespace annotation config context column. You can use annotation config. So what it will do, it will activate your annotations. So indirectly we are informing to IOC that we are using annotations. We are using annotations under classes. So it will be aware that IOC will be aware that you are using annotations. So it will perform some extra scanning whether the you have any annotated properties here or not. Then it will do the dependency injection. Not only for auto-wired annotation, there are lot other annotations that will be activated when you use context column annotation config. Just to activate your annotations, you need to use this. Remember, to activate annotations, we use this. When you go to Spring Boot, advanced Spring, right? There you don't have all this stuff. By default, they given one single annotation for everything. So just we will use that Spring Boot application annotation. Okay, that is in advanced level, but for now in Spring we do this way. In simple Spring framework we do this way to activate annotations and to create the objects. So if you see, do you guys have any doubts here? Is this topic clear? Yeah. Hmm. No, no, no. For stereotypes you need not to activate. As soon as you mention at the rate component scan, that means you are using stereotypes, right? So you need not. This is not mandatory. Yeah, kind of auto-wired annotation, auto-wired, post-construct, pre-destroy. There are life cycle annotations, okay, and other EJB annotations. It will activate them, okay. There are few other annotations. To activate them, we use this at the rate transaction annotation, okay. So to activate all such annotations, we use this. I'll show you that annotations list now, okay. In the description itself, they given, okay. I'll show you that. Is this topic clear, guys? Why we need to use stereotype annotations, how it is lessening our burden of creating XML based objects creation or dependency injections. Lot of time it will save, lot of redundant configurations or lot of confusion it will resolve. It will make your application you know a simple, your development simple. Need not to bother about configurations and that stuff. Just during creation of your class, think about the class, whether this class is a controller, service or DAO. So based on the class type, mention the particular annotation on top of it, and just focus on your methods implementation. During this method implementation, if you need any other class object, create that reference on class level and mention at the rate AutoWire. Thus, you are done. So automatically that object whichever you mentioned will be created. To create that object, definitely for that object also you must be created a class with stereotype. So that class also will be created by IOC container by just scanning that class from the package, and that object will be created. That will be available to AutoWrite here. Same way while creating that particular service class object, that one also may have dependency for your create method. So that dependency you can mention on instance level with AutoWrite, and this object also must be created by scanning the package, and as you mentioned on repository, at the rate repository annotation, that object also will be created and available for you. So you need to ensure whichever dependencies you are using, that dependencies also must be created. Otherwise, I mentioned the dependency, but why that is not coming means container can't do anything if you don't have that class available within the container. You should make it available. Whatever object you mentioned AutoWrite, right? You should make it available that object also into the container. How? If that class is a service, with at the rate service. If that class is a repository, at the rate repository. Or else it can be a component or configuration. Apart from these three, we will use component and configuration. Now let's see end-to-end example. Okay, let's see end-to-end example here. Yeah. Stereotype with AutoWire. Go to build path, config build path. Just adding all the library here. Let me create a few packages here. com.rbu dot employee management system dot web. Consider this is for your controller class. See the pattern how I will write the code. DAO. I have three packages, and I'm creating two more extra packages, config and util. For now, I don't use them. Later, I'll use it. Now, I'll just usually as a developer, when you have all the skills, we start from the DAO. First, we create database methods, then service, then web. Okay. So, as a beginner, we will start from the web layer only. First, we create web page, then controller, then service, then DAO, like that. You people write if you are a fresher, because the straight flow will help you to understand as a use case flow, right? Front end to how user will come to web, then web to business code to DAO, like that you will write. So the experienced guys will write from back to front. They will create table first, then for the table he will imagine what CRUD operations required. For the front end, if save is required, he will write save method first here. Then he will shift it to service class. There he will write the create method with all business logic just by calling DAO. Then he will shift to web. There he will write controller. Okay, that is the actual right approach. Okay, but let me start from web only. So here I'll write employee controller. So as soon as you create a class, just mention at the rate controller annotation. Now from here I want to call service methods, but before that, which parameters you want to read? I want to read something, a post method, consider here ID name. I want to read and I want to send this data to service. So for now I don't have any service class. So let's create service class. So this is the problem. If I go to front end to back end, right? So whichever methods I create, that methods without fully implementation. I need service class object. Without that object, I can't able to call service methods. So half cooking method I need to put here. Then I need to go to service class and I need to implement service class method. Employee service class at the rate service annotation public string create int id string name email address. Here also, this one also half cooking because I don't have DAO class. Employee DAO at the rate repository public string save. Now you complete this implementation here. Maybe use simple JDBC and do this class dot for name orchil dot JDBC dot orchil driver, get the connection, driver manager dot get connection colon orchil colon thin colon at the rate localhost 1521. statement dot execute update. For insert, execute update. Insert into RPU employee, and it insert ID, name, email address. ID, name, email address. Bus. So everything is fine. Statement dot close, connection dot close. If it is an exception, return e dot get message. If it is success, return success. So now DO implementation is done. Now go back to service and put auto wire on top of DO reference. Now let's use DO dot save method. Pass same ID, name, email address to DO. It will return you a string, sorry, message. Success or failure it will return the same. Same thing. Here you need employee service. So just mention at the rate auto wired on top of it. Now you can call your service method, employee service dot create. Pass ID, name, email address. You'll be getting string message. Return message. Bus. Now you need a front end, but as of now I'm not using any front end. I'll just write a simple test class. From there I will call this control. IOC test class. Application context AP equal to new class path XML application context. Okay, we need XML file, right? So we need XML file. So just configure your XML file here. Configure a Spring XML file with the context namespace. So scan your packages using context colon component scan. Okay, our main root package is com.rbu.ems. You can put that. Now as I am using stereotype annotations along with auto wired, right? I need to activate it. Context colon annotation config. If I highlight it, right, you can see all the annotations which is activating. Required, auto wired, post constructed, pre-destroy, resource, web service reference, @EJB, persistence context, persistence unit, transactional, transaction attribute annotations. So a lot of other annotations it is activating, but primarily my focus is for @AutoWire. Okay, I want to activate @AutoWire and I want to see. So as I mentioned, @AutoWire everywhere, I'm activating it. So activate annotation @AutoWire, and this one will scan your classes from mentioned package and create objects. It will scan your package and it will create objects for them. And the AutoWire will create whatever objects are created here, that will be mapped automatically. It will do the dependency injection. When you mention AutoWire, this employee service object, whichever is created here, right, with the stereotype, that object will be injected here. And here also we mentioned a DO with AutoWire. So this DO object with stereotype created, that will be injected here. So all three objects will be created and they are interlinked together. Now you can check it. Node resources slash string.xml and get your controller object. So just imagine this line number 11 is like a front end communication you are doing here. Employee controller. Just assume this is your front end call. So here you can call post method. Usually from front end I need to get the data, but no front end for me. So I'll be using my name, email and address. And finally it returns me a message whether it went success or failed. I can print it. So if you want, you can insert multiple users at a time. Go to DAO and check this table is available or not in Arkill. Let me check it. Create table, ID number, primary key. Name is already being used. What I will do, drop table and recreate it. Table is created. If you want the script, you can have it here. Okay. Now table is ready. Run this code and see what message you get. Resources spelling mistake. Okay, all other objects also created, but we didn't mention them. So finally getting message success, which means the data getting inserted. So you can do a select star from table and check it. So the data got inserted here successfully. So what happened behind the scene? First controller object created, then service object will be getting created. You can see if you want. So all these three objects will be created and auto wiring also happen here. Into this reference, it will auto wire. So what I will do, I will put debug pointer. Here, what is this? Watch point. Okay. So I am putting debug pointer here and watch pointer, and I'll run it in debug mode. I'll insert one more record here. Debug. So application started in debug mode. Just to see how it is executed. So it is started in debug mode. So now controller first it went to DAO object creation. So no object created. First it went to DAO constructor. So let's finish it. DAO object is created. Then what is the next step? Okay. Resume. So next it went to employee service object creation. So by that time this DAO is not auto wired. See inside DAO reference I can see still null. Okay, because your object itself is not created yet. Let's create this object. So service object also created. Still it is null. Proceed next step. Go back to okay. That's okay. So that must be injected now. Yeah. So the controller object also must be created. Employee controller created. DO created, service created, controller created. Now if I try to see employee service, service object is available here. One service object is available here. Service is having DO dependency. You can see that DO also auto-wide here. Inside service DO is available. Inside controller service is available. So all these objects are auto-wide interconnected. Controller is having service object, so the object you can see, and service is having DO object that you can see inside service. So now when I call this method here, it will go to service class method. From there, from here when I call DO save method, the call will go to DO class save method. So here it will execute this line by line, getting connection, creating statement. Yeah, coming 2 minutes. Yeah, done. So finally it went to success. Just a minute guys, I'll just come back. ಅವನು ಓಪನ್ చేయకు మేడం కి వెళ్ళండి స్లీప్ అయింది అమ్మా Yeah. So it went to till success call. So if you observe, right, one by one object created, it is auto wide. Then when you call methods, to call methods, when you requested for an object, that object given to you, and from here when you make a call, then your calls taking forward from there to here and here to here, whatever tasks you implemented in a sequence way, it is executed then. Okay, so this is how the stereotype and auto-aware annotations will help you to create objects and connect them together by doing automatic dependency injection. Okay, are you guys clear? If we don't write auto-wired now in this project, which action will fail? Yeah, if you don't mention auto-wired, your objects will not be injected. So what will happen? Tell me here. If I don't mention auto-wired, this object will not be injected. What is the default value if nothing is there? Null. If I call something on null, what you will get here? Null pointer exception. You can see. I'll just execute this controller class. There itself your code will be terminated. Your objects will be created but not auto-wired. Service is not auto-wired. So your code is terminating saying null pointer exception. Where do you got here? Why this is throwing null pointer exception? On null if you call something. This is contains null. So on null reference if you call something, you will be getting null pointer exception. Why it is null? Object is there. Is it not coming here by default? Yes, it will not come by default here until unless you mention at the rate auto-wire. Spring will not perform automatic dependency injection if you don't perform, if you don't put auto-wired here. So you need to mention auto-wired, then only this object will be injected here from here. This object, whichever is created, will be injected here. Same way, whichever DO object is created here, this will be injected into service here. Clear, everyone? Simple concepts, okay? But yeah, these are the important concepts for Spring, auto-wired and stereotypes. Okay, Spring coding is easy. Just few annotations you need to learn. Why that annotations are required and how they will, you know, perform. That's it. Okay. So tomorrow, as I said, right, component and configuration annotations are there still. So we will see configuration annotation. Okay. So that is very important annotation. Okay. So we need a session tomorrow session. About tomorrow session, I'll ping you in the group. Okay. So I have other batch. If I cancel that, I'll continue the session. Okay. So yeah, I'll inform it in the group and I'll take the session. Okay. Yeah. So if you guys clear, I'll wind up the session for today. Let me upload example, and videos are available up to date. Okay. Till last session videos are there. You guys can access them. Any questions? Are you guys daily doing practice with the blog example and the examples which I'm sharing? If you do practice, then only you can able to remember. Okay. Otherwise, you will forget. Alright. Auto wide stereotype hyphen auto wide. We can't process this file. Why so? Okay, I'll check this. It should work. You guys can drop if you don't have any questions. Okay. Yeah, this file is not allowed. I'll check it. So to insert value from XML, we have used value annotation. Correct. Using property value for simple primitives, reference for secondary types. If you remember, right? Yeah. So that reference we are avoiding here. And for simple primitives, instead of value property tag, we used at the rate value annotation. Simple, right? In case, not in case, actually we are creating objects all with the stereotypes. So we need not to perform any manual dependency injection. Coming to strings kind of primitives, right? Still, if you have requirement to inject them, you can inject them, not from the XML file in a different way. Load that properties it into context of space, and then using at the rate value under value you can mention dollar, the key of your property, and you can inject it. Okay. So yeah, for primitives we use at the rate value. For secondary types we use at the rate auto wire. Okay. Yeah. Going forward we use that for multiple times. Okay. So you'll be getting answer. If no questions, I'll close session for today. We'll meet